For context, our parents passed away in a car accident when I was 22 and Lily was 14. It was sudden, devastating, and it completely upended our lives. They didn't have much in the way of life insurance or savings, just the small house we grew up in. I was in my final year of a community college program, but I dropped out to get a full-time job at a local warehouse to keep us afloat. My life became about one thing: making sure Lily had the stability and future our parents would have wanted for her. She was always the brilliant one. Straight A's, ambitious, with dreams of becoming an architect. Our parents had always told her she could be anything she wanted to be, and after they were gone, I made that promise my own. I told her, "Don't you worry about a thing. You just focus on your schoolwork. I'll take care of the rest." And I did. For the past 6 years, I've worked. I started at the warehouse, a back-breaking job loading and unloading trucks from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. A few years ago, when it became clear that her top-choice university was going to be expensive, I picked up a second job. From 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., I work as a janitor at a downtown office building. My days are long. I leave home when it's dark and I come home when it's dark. My social life is non-existent. My friends from high school have moved on, gotten married, started careers. I'm still in our childhood home, driving a 15-year-old car, and my biggest splurge of the month is buying a pizza instead of eating instant noodles. But it was all worth it, or so I told myself. Every time Lily called, excited about a class, a project, or a new friend, I felt a surge of pride. I was doing it. I was honoring our parents' memory. I was giving my little sister the future she deserved. I sent her money for tuition, for her dorm, for books, and a generous monthly allowance so she wouldn't have to worry about a thing. I wanted her to have the full college experience, something I never got. The cracks started to show slowly. Her requests for extra money became more frequent. A new laptop because hers was acting slow. A ski trip with her friends because everyone is going and it's great for networking. Designer clothes because she needs to look presentable for internships. I always found a way. I'd take on an extra weekend shift, cut my grocery budget even further. I told myself it was an investment in her future. The phone call that changed everything happened last night. I had just gotten home from my janitor shift. My feet were throbbing, my back was a knot of pain, and I was staring at a bowl of microwaved rice and beans. My phone rang. It was Lily. "Hey, Alex," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. She didn't ask how I was. She never does anymore. "Hey, Lils. What's up?" "So, super exciting news. A bunch of us are planning a trip to Cancun for spring break. It's going to be absolutely epic. All-inclusive resort, right on the beach. It's only $1,500 for the week." I almost choked on my rice. $1,500. That's more than I make in a month after taxes from my main job. That's hundreds of hours of cleaning toilets and hauling boxes. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. "Lily, that's a lot of money. I just paid your tuition installment last month. Things are a little tight right now." Her cheerful tone vanished, replaced by an icy frustration. "Tight? Alex, it's spring break. This is part of college. I can't be the only one of my friends who doesn't go. It's embarrassing. I understand, but $1,500 is just not possible right now," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "Maybe you could look into getting a part-time job on campus? Even just a few hours a week could help with spending money for things like this." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her fuming. When she finally spoke, her voice was dripping with a kind of venom I had never heard from her before. "A part-time job? Are you serious? I'm a full-time architecture student in a highly competitive program. I don't have time for a job. My job is to study, which is only possible because you're supposed to be supporting me." That was the deal. The deal was I'd help you get through school, Lily. Tuition, housing, food. A trip to Cancun is not part of that, I argued, my own frustration starting to bubble up. And then she said it. The words that have been replaying in my head on a loop ever since. You know what your problem is, Alex? You just don't get it. You've never been to a real university. You're just stuck back home, working your dead-end jobs. You wouldn't understand what it's like to have ambition, to have a future. Honestly, sometimes I feel sorry for you. My friends talk about their successful older siblings, and what am I supposed to say? My brother is a janitor. You're just a loser. A loser who is trying to hold me back because you have nothing going for yourself. The word loser hit me like a physical blow. It sucked the air out of my lungs. Every sore muscle, every missed party, every lonely night, every sacrifice I'd made for the last 6 years coalesced into a single point of excruciating pain in my chest. I had given up my youth, my dreams, my entire life for her. And this is what she thought of me. Not a protector, not a loving brother, but a loser. An obstacle. An embarrassment. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. Alex? Are you even listening? She snapped, impatient. So are you going to send the money or not? I found my voice, but it was hollow, empty. No, Lily. I'm not. What? You can't be serious. I'm tired, I said, the words barely a whisper. I have to go. I hung up before she could say another word. I stared at the wall of my tiny kitchen, the congealing rice and beans forgotten in front of me. The silence in the house was deafening. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't thinking about Lily's future. I was thinking about my own, and the terrifying, empty void where it was supposed to be. And all I could hear was her voice, calling me a loser. I think she might have broken me. The night after that phone call was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the word loser echoing in the darkness. It was like a brand, seared into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of my life, my calloused hands, the grime under my fingernails that never fully washes out, the fluorescent lights of the office building at 10 p.m., the heavy ache in my shoulders at the warehouse. These were the things that made me a loser in her eyes. The very things I was doing for her. The hurt was so profound it felt physical. But as the sun started to rise, painting my window in shades of gray, the hurt began to curdle into something else, a cold, hard anger. Anger at her, of course, but also anger at myself. For 6 years, I had put myself on a sacrificial altar. I had convinced myself that my own life, my own happiness, was secondary to her success. I had enabled her entitlement, her blindness to the reality of my life. I had taught her that money simply appeared in her bank account, with no thought to the sweat and exhaustion it cost me. By the time my 6 a.m. alarm went off, I had made a decision. It was a terrifying, liberating decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. I called in sick to both of my jobs. It was the first time in years. The warehouse foreman was surprised, but just said, "Okay, feel better." My supervisor at the cleaning company sounded more annoyed, but I didn't care. For the first time, I was putting myself first. My first real action was the hardest. With trembling hands, I logged into my online banking. I looked at the automatic monthly transfer scheduled to go to Lily's account. It was a huge sum, covering her allowance and extra living expenses. My finger hovered over the cancel button for a long time. This felt so final. This was the point of no return. I thought about my promise to our parents. I thought about 14-year-old Lily, crying at their funeral, and how I had sworn to protect her. Then I thought about her voice, dripping with contempt. "You're just a loser." I clicked the button. A confirmation screen popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled transfer?" I clicked yes. It was done. Next, I called her university's financial aid office. I identified myself as the primary person responsible for Lily's tuition payments. I explained, in a calm and detached voice, that effective immediately, I would no longer be making those payments. The woman on the other end was professional but clearly taken aback. She informed me that the next payment was due in 3 months and that if it wasn't made, Lily would be deregistered from her classes. We will be sending a formal notification to Ms. Evans to inform her of this change in her financial status, she said. I recommend she contact our office immediately to discuss her options, such as student loans or a work-study program. I thanked her and hung up. I felt a strange mix of guilt and empowerment. The house of cards I had so painstakingly built for her was about to come tumbling down. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. Around midday, my phone started buzzing incessantly. A string of texts from Lily. Lily, hey, the transfer didn't come through. Did you forget? Lily, Alex, I need that money for groceries. Lily, hello? Lily, why aren't you answering me? This isn't funny. Lily, Alex. My debit card was just declined at the campus store. What is going on? I read them all, my heart pounding, but I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. An hour later, she called. I ignored it. She called again. And again. And again. 10 missed calls in 15 minutes. Then came the voicemails. The first one was frantic. The second was furious. The third was a string of shouted insults that made loser sound like a compliment. I turned my phone off. The peace lasted for about 2 hours. Then, a knock on my door. I peered through the peephole and my stomach dropped. It was our Aunt Carol, our mom's sister. She lives about an hour away and usually only visits on holidays. Lily had obviously called her in a panic. The family was now being deployed. I opened the door. Aunt Carol had a worried look on her face, the kind she always wore when she was about to lecture me. Alex, thank goodness. I've been calling you, she said, bustling inside without an invitation. Lily called me, hysterical. She said you've cut her off completely. What on earth is going on? I stood in my own living room, feeling like a child being scolded. We had a disagreement, I said, my voice flat. A disagreement? Alex, she's your sister. She said her card was declined. She has no money for food. You can't just do that to her. What did you two even fight about? I took a breath. She asked me for $1,500 to go on a trip to Cancun for spring break. I told her I couldn't afford it. She didn't take it well. Aunt Carol waved her hand dismissively. Oh, kids these days. They all want these fancy trips. You just have to be firm and say no. But to cut her off entirely? That's a massive overreaction, don't you think? You're the adult here, Alex. You're the one who is supposed to be responsible. The gaslighting was immediate and potent. Suddenly, I was the one who had overreacted. I was the irresponsible one. My reasons were being minimized, and my actions were being magnified. It wasn't just about the trip, Aunt Carol, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It was what she said. I told her. I repeated the words that had been haunting me. I told her that Lily called me a loser, a janitor with no ambition who was holding her back. I expected some sympathy. A flicker of understanding. Instead, Aunt Carol sighed, as if I was being dramatic. She's a 20-year-old girl under a lot of pressure, Alex, she said, her tone patronizing. Students say stupid things when they're stressed. She probably didn't even mean it. You can't throw away her entire future because she said one hurtful word. Think of what your mother would want. There it was. The ultimate weapon in their arsenal. What your parents would want. What my parents would want, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, is for their daughter not to see their son, who has sacrificed everything for her, as a worthless loser. The conversation went in circles for another hour. She accused me of being cruel, of being vindictive, of forgetting my family duty. Lily's insult was framed as a minor slip-up, while my reaction was a catastrophic, life-ruining betrayal. By the time she left, frustrated that I wouldn't budge, I felt drained and more alone than ever. I turned my phone back on. There was a new text message. It wasn't from Lily. It was from an unknown number. "This is Mark, Lily's boyfriend. You need to fix this. She's a mess. Don't be a selfish asshole and ruin her life." So now her boyfriend was involved. I blocked the number. But it was clear this was just the beginning. I had knocked over the first domino. And I was standing right in the path of all the others as they started to fall. The days following Aunt Carol's visit were a siege. It was a coordinated campaign, and Lily was the general. My phone became a source of constant anxiety. If it wasn't Aunt Carol leaving disappointed voicemails, it was my uncle on my dad's side, a man I hadn't spoken to in over a year, texting me to be the bigger person. The family narrative had been firmly established. Alex is having a selfish tantrum and is cruelly punishing his poor, struggling student sister over a minor spat. They painted a picture of Lily subsisting on ramen. The irony was lost on them, on the verge of being homeless, her brilliant academic career about to be snuffed out. No one, not a single person, asked me how I was feeling. No one acknowledged the substance of my complaint. The focus was entirely on Lily's perceived suffering and my overreaction. I continued to ignore the calls and texts. I went to work at the warehouse, moving through my day in a fog of anger and exhaustion. The physical labor was a welcome distraction, a way to channel some of the rage. But the janitor job was torture. Alone in the quiet, empty office building, my mind would race. I'd clean the polished desks and empty boardrooms where people with real careers worked, and Lily's voice would echo in my ears. Loser. Was she right? Had I become nothing more than the man who cleans up after successful people go home? I was starting to doubt myself. The constant pressure was wearing me down. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should just call her, set some new boundaries, and turn the money back on. The guilt was eating me alive. I felt responsible, programmed to be her provider for so long that I didn't know how to stop. That's when she decided to call me herself. It was late on a Friday night. I was sitting on my porch, drinking a cheap beer, trying to enjoy a moment of peace. My phone buzzed. It was her. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. Maybe I wanted to hear if there was any remorse in her voice. Maybe I just wanted it to be over. "Hello?" I said, my voice wary. "Alex," she said. Her tone wasn't angry or demanding this time. It was quiet, measured. It sounded rehearsed. "Lily. Look," she started, taking a shaky breath. "Aunt Carol told me she talked to you. And I've been doing a lot of thinking." My heart gave a stupid little flutter of hope. Was this it? Was she finally going to acknowledge what she did? "I'm sorry," she said. The words hung in the air for a moment. I waited. She continued. "I'm sorry if what I said hurt your feelings. I was just really stressed about school and the Cancun trip, and I said something stupid. I didn't really mean it. If what I said hurt your feelings." The classic non-apology. It wasn't an apology for her actions, it was an apology for my reaction to them. She wasn't sorry for stabbing me, she was sorry that I was bleeding. "You didn't mean it?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Which part didn't you mean, Lily? The part where I'm a loser? The part where I'm a janitor with no ambition? Or the part where I'm holding you back?" "Oh my God, Alex, can you just let it go?" she snapped, the mask of contrition slipping immediately. "It was just words. You're making this into a huge deal." I said I was sorry. "No, you said you were sorry my feelings were hurt. There's a difference." She let out an exasperated sigh, the one she uses when she thinks I'm being slow or difficult. "Fine. I'm sorry I called you a loser. Okay? Happy now? Can we please be done with this drama? The university sent me a letter. They said you're not paying my tuition anymore. You can't be serious about that. My finals are coming up. I need to be able to focus. The transactional nature of the apology was stunning. It wasn't about mending our relationship. It was a calculated move, a box she needed to check to get what she wanted, the money. She thought those two little words, "I'm sorry," were a magic key that would unlock my bank account again. "So that's what this is about," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You need the tuition money, so you're calling to say the magic words." "It's not just about the money," she insisted, though her tone betrayed her. "It's about the fact that you're my brother and you're supposed to support me. You promised Mom and Dad. I promised to help you get an education, not to be your personal doormat, Lily. Not to be insulted and belittled by the person I've given up my entire life for. Do you have any idea what my life is like? Any clue at all?" "I know you work hard," she said dismissively. "But that's what adults do. They work." The casual cruelty of that statement knocked the wind out of me. She saw my sacrifice not as a gift, but as a simple, expected duty. My life wasn't a life, it was a utility to power hers. "I'm done, Lily," I said, and this time, the words felt solid, real. The doubt that had been creeping in was gone, burned away by her hollow apology. "The money is not coming back on. You're 20 years old. You're an adult too. You need to figure out how to pay for your own spring break trips from now on. And your tuition. Call the financial aid office. Get a loan. Get a job. That's what adults do. You're going to ruin my life," she shrieked, the desperation and rage boiling over. "I'll have to drop out. I'll have to come home. Is that what you want? For me to be a loser just like you?" She'd said it again. In her anger, the truth came out once more. That's what she really thought of me. And she thought that threatening to become like me was the ultimate insult, the ultimate punishment she could inflict. But it didn't work. It was like she had tried to stab me in the same place twice. The wound was already there, all she did was confirm how deep it was. "Maybe you coming home and getting a job for a while wouldn't be the worst thing in the world," I said, my voice cold as ice. "Maybe it would teach you the value of $1, and the cost of the words you use so carelessly." I didn't wait for a reply. I hung up the phone and, with a finality that felt like a closing door, I blocked her number. I blocked Aunt Carol. I blocked my uncle. I was done with the siege. I was done being gaslit. I was done being their villain. If they wanted to believe I was a loser, fine. But this loser was no longer paying the bills. Blocking my sister and the flying monkeys in my family felt like silencing a hurricane. The sudden quiet was both peaceful and unnerving. For the first time in nearly a decade, my life was truly my own, and I had no idea what to do with it. My entire existence had been structured around my 2 jobs and Lily's needs. Now, a huge part of that structure was gone. A strange thing happened in the following weeks. Without the constant financial pressure of funding Lily's lifestyle, I realized I didn't need to work 2 jobs anymore. The thought was revolutionary. My second job as a janitor was the one I hated most. It was isolating, thankless, and paid the least. It was purely to fund Lily's extras. One evening, after my warehouse shift, I drove to the office building, sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, and then drove home. The next morning, I called my supervisor and quit. He was indifferent, merely saying he'd mail my final paycheck. Just like that, I had my evenings back. I had my weekends back. The freedom was dizzying. I started to reconnect with the world. I called up an old high school friend, Mark, who I hadn't seen in years. We met up for a beer. He didn't ask about Lily. He asked about me. How I was doing, what I was interested in. It felt strange to even think about it. I told him about the janitor job, how I'd just quit. "Good for you, man," he said, raising his glass. "That sounds like it was draining you dry. What are you going to do with all your free time?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe fix up the house. It's been falling apart for years." "You were always good with computers back in the day," he mused. Ever think about going back to school for that? The community college has some great IT certification programs. My company hires people out of there all the time. It was a spark. A tiny flicker of an idea for my own future. Something that had been unthinkable just a month ago. But even with this newfound freedom, a part of me still felt a nagging guilt. Had I been too harsh? Was Lily really about to be kicked out of school, her dreams dashed, all because of my hurt pride? The "what would mom and dad want" argument from my aunt still echoed in my head. The revelation that completely erased that guilt came from an unexpected source: social media. It was stupid, really. I never used Instagram, but one night, bored and restless, I created a blank account just to scroll. On a whim, I searched for Lily. Her profile was public. I clicked on it, and my world tilted on its axis. The picture my family had painted of a poor, struggling student was a complete and utter fabrication. Her feed was a curated gallery of a life of luxury and leisure, all funded by my 16-hour workdays. There were pictures from last semester's networking ski trip, her in expensive ski gear, laughing with friends in a fancy lodge. There were dozens of photos of her and her friends at high-end restaurants in the city, with plates of food that would cost me a full day's wages. There were posts tagged at boutique clothing stores, showing off new outfits. The laptop I'd nearly bankrupted myself to buy her was featured prominently, but so was a new iPad and an Apple Watch I knew nothing about. The real gut punch was a post from a month ago. It was a photo album titled "Last Minute Miami Getaway." Pictures of her and her boyfriend, the selfish asshole who had texted me, on a sunny beach, drinking cocktails. This was before she had even asked me for money for Cancun. She had already been on a lavish beach vacation. The Cancun trip wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime experience, it was just the next item on her social calendar. I scrolled, my blood turning to ice. I felt like a fool. A blind, stupid fool. She wasn't just getting by, she was living better than I could ever have imagined. The allowance I thought was for food and necessities was her party fund. The extra money for school supplies was for designer bags and concert tickets. And then I saw it. A group photo from a party, posted just 2 weeks ago, after I had cut her off. She was in a crowded room, holding up a red plastic cup, smiling broadly. The caption, written by her friend, read, "Lily's living that broke college kid life now, but will still find a way to party. Hashtag fundraiser for Lily, hashtag send help," with a bunch of laughing emojis. Beneath it, a comment from Lily herself, "LOL, gotta get a job to support my bougie lifestyle now that my human ATM is offline." Human ATM. That's all I ever was to her. Not a brother. Not family. A machine that dispensed cash. The loser comment wasn't a stressed-out slip of the tongue. It was a reflection of her genuine, deep-seated contempt. I was the embarrassing, low-class utility that enabled her high-class life. She didn't respect my sacrifice, she was ashamed of its source. My dirty, laborious life was the price of her clean, glamorous one, and she resented me for it. Every ounce of guilt I had felt vanished, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I had done the right thing. Not just for me, but for her. I had been enabling a monster of entitlement, and the only way to help her was to let her face the consequences of her own actions. I took screenshots of everything. The vacation photos, the shopping sprees, and especially the human ATM comment. I sent them to a single group chat, Aunt Carol and my uncle. I didn't add any text. The pictures spoke for themselves. Then, I did something just for me. I went online and looked up the IT certification program at the local community college. The enrollment deadline for the fall semester was in 1 week. I filled out the application. For the first time since my parents died, I was investing in my own future. I was no longer a human ATM. I was just Alex. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Hello Reddit. It's been a while. A year, to be exact. I've read all the comments and messages on my previous posts, and the support I received was overwhelming. It helped me through some of the darkest days, so thank you for that. A lot of you asked for a final update, so here it is. The year after the revelation was one of massive reconstruction, both externally and internally. Sending those screenshots to my aunt and uncle had an immediate effect. The silence was absolute. No more lectures, no more guilt trips, no more disappointed voicemails. They had been confronted with undeniable proof of Lily's deception, and it seems the shame was enough to make them retreat. I haven't heard from either of them since. My life, on the other hand, started to fill with noise, good noise. I was accepted into the IT certification program. Walking onto that community college campus was surreal. It was the same place I had abandoned 8 years earlier, but I was a different man. I wasn't a kid anymore, I was a 28-year-old with a purpose that was finally my own. The classes were challenging and fascinating. I discovered I had a real aptitude for network security. For the first time in years, I was using my brain, not just my body. I studied in the evenings, the time I used to spend mopping floors. I formed a study group with a few other students, people who were also changing careers. We were all a bit older, all hungry for a second chance. They became my friends. We'd grab food after class, complain about exams, and talk about our futures. It was a life I didn't realize I had been starving for. Working one job felt like a vacation. My finances were tighter without the second income, but I was managing my money for me. I started a small savings account. I fixed the leaky roof on the house. I even bought a new pair of running shoes and started jogging in the mornings. I lost weight. The perpetual exhaustion that had been my constant companion for years began to lift. I started to look less like a ghost and more like a person. About 6 months ago, I finished my certification program at the top of my class. My friend Mark, true to his word, passed my resume to his boss. After 2 interviews, I was offered a job as a junior IT support analyst at a mid-sized tech company. The pay was already more than my warehouse job, with regular hours, benefits, and, most importantly, a path for advancement. Walking in on my first day, dressed in a button-down shirt instead of a worn-out t-shirt, felt like a victory. I have my own cubicle, a computer that isn't for data entry, and colleagues who talk about code and servers. I'm learning every day. I'm not a loser. I'm a professional, building a career. So, what about Lily? I didn't hear from her directly for almost 10 months. I learned bits and pieces through the grapevine of distant relatives. The story, as I've pieced it together, is that reality hit her like a freight train. Without my money, she couldn't afford her rent or her tuition. Her friends and her boyfriend, Mark, weren't so keen to hang around when she could no longer fund their lifestyle. She had to do exactly what I told her to do. She met with the financial aid office and took out a massive student loan. She was forced to sell her designer clothes and her car. She moved out of her chic apartment and into a dingy room she shares with 2 other students. And she got a job. 2, actually. One is a barista on campus and another waiting tables at a restaurant on weekends. According to a cousin who saw her over the holidays, she's changed. She's thin, tired, and rarely smiles. She had to drop her prestigious architecture major because the workload was impossible to manage with 2 jobs. She's now pursuing a less demanding business degree. Her glamorous life, built on my back, had crumbled to dust. I don't feel joy at her hardship, but I do feel a sense of profound, grim justice. She is now living the life she forced upon me, and I hope, for her sake, that she is learning from it. 2 months ago, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It was a physical letter, handwritten. The return address was hers. I let it sit on my counter for 3 days before I worked up the courage to open it. It wasn't angry or demanding. It was just 5 pages long. In it, she apologized. A real, gut-wrenching apology. She didn't make excuses. She wrote about how she'd had to work a 12-hour double shift and came home too tired to even eat, and how she broke down crying because she finally, truly understood what my life had been like for years. She admitted to her entitlement, her cruelty, and her profound selfishness. She called herself a spoiled brat and a terrible sister. She wrote, "You weren't the loser, Alex. I was. I was a loser for not seeing the king you were, sacrificing everything for me. I see it now." She didn't ask for money or for me to come back into her life. She just said she hoped that one day, years from now, she might earn the right to call me her brother again. I read the letter and I cried. I cried for the brother and sister we lost. I cried for the years I had lost. And I cried because, for the first time, I felt a sense of closure. I haven't written back yet. I might, someday. But not now. The wound is still healing. For now, I'm focusing on my own life. I'm even seeing someone, a woman from my work who thinks my story is one of strength, not shame. The loser comment nearly destroyed me, but in the end, it was a gift. It was a wake-up call that forced me to reclaim my own life. I am no longer a human ATM. I'm Alex. I have a future. And it's looking bright.